Welcome everyone, good evening. I'd like to start the SVCE Board of Directors special meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. And could we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Abikoga,
Here.
Vice Chair Campbell,
Here.
Directors Willie,
Here.
Armendariz. We've just noted that she will be absent for this meeting, likely. Director Flagor.
Here. Perfect pronunciation.
Tyson.
Here.
Rennie.
Here.
Chua.
Here.
Elahi.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Martinez Beltran.
Here.
Walia.
Perfect, thank you here.
Larson. And Lee.
Perfect, here as well.
Wow, I'm impressed. You got mine right too.
So it's noted that Director Larson and alternate Director Armendariz are not present for the roll call for the closed session.
Great, thank you. I guess I have to still read our COVID notice. So this meeting will be conducted in accordance with State of California Executive Order N2920, dated March 17, 2020, in consideration of the coronavirus COVID-19. All members of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors and staff will participate in this meeting by teleconference. The public may provide comments on the closed session matters before the board convenes the closed session. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker based on the number of speakers, the length of the agenda, and the complexity of the subject matter. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. And we are at that point of public comment on this closed session items. Are there any members of the public? Actually, there are no members of the public at all. So we will close public comment then. And at this time, I'd like to make the closed session announcement. We will now convene to closed session to discuss public employee performance evaluation of the Chief Executive Officer. We are anticipating an estimated return time of probably 7 o'clock, which is the start of our regular meeting time. And we actually cannot start earlier than 7. So we will be back at 7 at the earliest, I'd say. And
also, Chair, there will be also briefly a conference with labor negotiator after the performance evaluation.
Yes, thank you for the second closed session item. So with that, if all attendees who are not board members could please leave the meeting.
And if I'm, pardon the interruption, may I note that Director Wiley is now with us?
Yes. Welcome, Director Willie. Welcome to our Silicon Valley Clean Energy regular board meeting for the month of September. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. and I'll start with the COVID announcement. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with State of California Executive Order N2920, dated March 17, 2020, in consideration of the coronavirus COVID-19. All members of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors and staff will participate in this meeting by teleconference. Members of the public may observe this meeting electronically by accessing the meeting via instructions on the agenda. Public comments can be sent in advance, or that were sent in advance of the meeting to the board clerk will be read within the public comment period or the applicable agenda item. The public will also have an opportunity to provide comments during the meeting. The public may provide comments on any matter listed on the agenda. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker based on the number of speakers, the length of the agenda, and the complexity of the subject matter. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. And with that, could we get a roll call vote, please. I'm sorry, just a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yes. Here.
Chair Abikoga,
Here.
Directors Gibbons,
Here,
Willie,
Here.
Armandaras, Flygore,
here,
Tyson,
Here.
Rennie,
Here,
Chua,
here,
Elahi,
Present.
Martinez Beltran,
Here.
Walia,
Here,
Larson, and Lee.
Here.
Chair, it is noted that Director Armandares is not present during roll
Hey.
call.
She is.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I
sorry?
was, yeah, I was trying to unmute. I'm here.
Okay, I stand corrected. And it is also noted that Director Larson is running late. His Sunnyvale council meeting is running late, but he is anticipating on joining us later.
Great, thank you very much. And I just want to welcome Supervisor Otto Lee as our alternate director from Santa Clara County. This is his first board meeting with us. Great to have you. Welcome and look forward to your participation.
Thank you, Chairman Abikoga.
Thank you. With that, we'll go on to the report from closed session.
And Chair and Board, there is no report. Direction was given to staff, but no report.
Great, thank you very much. Next is our public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda. If any members of the public would like to speak on a non-agenda item, folks could otherwise mute yourselves. Thank you. If you have an item, comment on a non-agendized item, please raise your hand if you're in the attendee box. And if you're on the phone, please press *9. And we will start with Bruce Carney. Mr. Carney, welcome. You can
Thank you, Chair.
There you go.
I hope there's no background noise. I'm outside enjoying the cool air this evening rather than in the warm house. I'd like to particularly address my remarks to the very successful Reach Code 1.0 effort that SVCE and PCE helped to spearhead starting, gosh, more than 2 years ago now. It's come to my attention that there are 2 jurisdictions in Santa Clara County that are going to be looking at reach codes in the next month or 2. So one of those is the city of Santa Clara, and the other is Santa Clara County. And I think it's really critical that those cities that have already passed a reach code talk to the Santa Clara supervisors, city of Santa Clara supervisors and the Santa Clara County board members to help them understand the benefits and to know what some of the public pushback might be about reach codes. I really would love to see both the city and the county of Santa Clara join all the other jurisdictions that have enacted strong reach codes. I would love it even more if one of those entities went as far as Menlo Park almost did last week, which is to initiate a replace on burnout ordinance, which would say, for example, that if your natural gas powered water heater failed, you'd need to replace it with a heat pump or electric water heater, not another gas appliance. That's the kind of bold thinking that our area and the state and the nation are going to need to try to meet the climate goals that we've committed to. 3 minutes is not enough time to even begin to list the climate disasters that have taken place just in the last few months. It was only 6 or 7 months ago that Texas froze. Now California burns, New York and New Jersey drown. Bolder and bolder action is necessary. And I really look to this board and SVCE as the agency that will show the rest of the world how it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wishing to comment on a non-agendized item? Please raise your hand. I don't see any. So with that, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. And we will be looking forward to Santa Clara County's decision on reach codes. It's all on you, Supervisor Lee.
Noted. Thank you.
We'll now go on to the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any board members would like to remove or to comment on?
Chair and board members, there's actually one item. I don't need to remove it from the agenda here, but I will just read the primary terms for the CEO's contract. And this is amendment number 4 to the Chief Executive Officer contract with SVCE. And under state law, we do need to disclose the financial terms of this amendment. And so I'll just run through those very quickly. The first is that the term of the contract will be extended by 2 years from October 1, 2021 to September 30, 2023. The annual salary is increased from $351,000 to $384,000. Also, there's a provision that provides that any travel, food, or lodging will not be reimbursed to the CEO between his primary residence in Oceanside and the SVC office. And lastly, that there will be a reopener in the second year of this extended contract. And at that point in time, the board may consider a salary increase or a reimbursement of some travel expenses, but it'll be subject to a satisfactory performance review.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spanidich. Any board members with comments or removal of items? I don't see any hands. I will open this up to the public. Any members of the public wishing to comment on a consent calendar item, please raise your hand or hit *9 on the phone. I don't see any hands, so I will close public comment, bring it back to the board for any final comments, or happy to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar items with the additional information provided by our attorney.
Second.
Thank you. So the motion is from Vice Chair Gibbons and seconded by Director Feiger. Any other discussion? If not, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Abikoga,
Aye.
Gibbons,
Aye.
Willie,
Aye.
Armandaris,
Yes.
Flygore,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie, Rennie,
Aye.
Chua,
Aye.
Elahi,
Yes.
Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Is Mr. Larson with us? No. And finally, alternate Director Lee.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you. We will now move on to the regular calendar. And before we start the items, there's actually a request to change the order. So we would like to take item 4 before item 3. So it will be item 2, item 4, and then item 3. And I wanted to ask legal counsel, do we need to take a vote in the changing of the order of the items, or?
No, the chair can order the change in the order of the agenda as long as there's no objections from the rest of the board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any objections to the order change? No? All right, thank you. So then with that, we will go to item 2, the CEO report. And we have our CEO, Girish Balachandran. Mr. Balachandran, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Abikoga, members of the board. I have a few items to update you on. First, on hiring, we have made 4 offers for employment for new employees. They have all been accepted. 3 of the 4 are in the power supply group. So the power supply group will have the first new employee joining on September 20th, the second on September 27th, and the third on November 29th. Don Bray's group has also hired one person, and so that would be the fourth, and she will be starting on September 20th. So at the October meeting, you'll have several introductions, including 2 climate fellows who started yesterday. So you'll have at least 5 intros of new SVCE team members at the October board meeting. You're also aware of the Flex alert that Pamela updated you on, and I'm sure you got updated through various channels. Thank you all in advance for your help in passing the message on to all the channels that you are part of also. On the prepay project that you have approved, we left you with waiting for the pricing to be right to actually sell the bonds. We may actually be very, very close in the next day or two. We'd be going out to sell these bonds. So it's a giant team effort from the underwriters and a whole variety of people. And Amrit has been our point person on this, but wanted to update you that we'll send you an email soon after the sale closes. I now will pass it on to our Director of Policy, Melissa Charles, and she'll provide you an update on legislative and regulatory affairs. And Chair Abekoga, after that, my CEO report ends. Thank you.
Good evening, directors. So there is a lot going on the legislative and regulatory level. So first with regulatory, procurement continues to be a top issue for us. As I discussed last month, the governor issued an emergency declaration in July to increase supply and reduce demand due to extreme weather and wildfires. And then last month, the California Energy Commission issued an analysis projecting up to 5,200 megawatts will be needed of procurement next summer. Shortly after that, the CPUC issued a concept paper, which is basically a proposal, a staff proposal, proposing expediting some of the new procurement to meet the summer reliability needs. They also proposed increasing penalties for CCAs and other load-serving entities if procurement mandates weren't met. And they also proposed changes to their new demand reduction program that was established earlier this year. We are working both with our internal teams and with CalCCA on providing feedback on the concept paper, which is at this point, like I said, a proposal. We do expect a decision in late October, and it will definitely be informed by the Energy Commission analysis with the additional procurement, as well as parties' feedback on the concept paper. So that's the top issue that we are focusing on the regulatory side. On the legislative side, as you probably know, this is the last week of the legislative session. The legislature has until Friday to pass bills, and then after that, the governor has 30 days to either sign or veto those bills. We continue to watch the 2 Brown Act bills. That includes AB 361, the Rivas bill, and AB 339, the Lee bill. AB 361 would allow us to keep pandemic teleconferencing rules if there is a state declaration of emergency that encourages social distancing. The bill has since been amended to make it an urgency bill, which basically means it will take effect as soon as the governor signs the bill. And we've just found out the bill was referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee today so that they can review amendments. We don't expect any major changes. We expect it to proceed as normally, but we will definitely let you know if there are any changes. And a hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. For the Lee bill, that allows the public to continue to participate. So it's about public access, and that bill is on the Senate floor. Then there's also the budget trailer bill. The legislature is working hard to finalize the slate of budget trailer bills to determine the details on how the state will spend this year's budget. And there's a lot in the budget, but we did want to flag for you the energy budget trailer bill, which is AB 155, which includes $25 million for fiscal year 22 to 23, and $75 million for the subsequent year for Community Resilience Center, for a Community Resilience Center grant program to build or retrofit community centers that are used for extreme heat or emergency events due to climate change. And that is my very short update. Before I turn it over to questions, I did want to just say that as of next Wednesday, Benna will be going on leave. And I wanted to say, she's here right now, so I want to say a thank you to her. In the almost 5 short months she's been here, she's been working really hard, engaging you all you directors, engaging staff internally, and doing a lot of outreach when it comes to SB 612, other legislative items, federal items, the budget, and also equity. So I just wanted to say a thank you to Benna. And with that, if you have any questions, I will take those.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions for either Ms. Charles or Mr. Balachandran from the board? I don't see any hands, so I will open up to the public. Any members of the public wishing to speak on the CEO's report? I don't see any hands there, so I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board, and this was an information item, no action needed. So thank you very much. We will move on to, so this is item 4 on the agenda, but we're moving it to item 3, the adoption of fiscal year 22 strategic focus areas and an update on the fiscal year 22 strategic work plan. And again, we will ask our CEO for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Abikoga. And Dorothy, would you please bring up the presentation? So as Dorothy brings it up, say the strategic focus areas and strategic plan is something we talk to you about, seems like endlessly, but that's kind of the whole point of the board and CEO relationship, is to look out of the horizon, look at the landscape, and see what's coming up over there. So we also do this in tandem with the budget and the CEO evaluation to see that all 3 are aligned. We can go to the next slide. Several of the slides, board, that you would have been familiar with, but I just want to frame it so we can get to the recommendation quickly. This is going to be a short presentation. So here's the process that I talked about, and we have visited different committees and the board as a whole with both the strategic plan and the budget. And then, of course, over the last few months, we've had my evaluation. Big picture, going to the next slide, there are no changes to the mission or the measure. The board has kept that the same. To the next slide, which you've seen before, the only changes are what's highlighted since our August meeting, as was mentioned by a member of the public at that meeting and as was recognized by the board, and you'll see it reflected in the goals. The IPCC Code Red Report is one of the external, it's just basic. Essentially, where we are right now is not a good place. Also, as Melissa said, we may have an additional 5,000 megawatts as the state as a whole of emergency procurement over the next 2 years. And in the last column, I am looking at opportunities for shared services. And this comes to, as we've had challenges with hiring, and we look at where CCAs can work together. Shared services is a concept similar to what we do with California Community Choice Financing Authority, which is the financing authority that is issuing the bonds for the prepay, and also similar to CC Power for joint procurement. On the next slide, you've seen this before. This is a summary of executive committee and board input, with the latest board input highlighted from the August board meeting, which is basically look at programs, take a deep look at programs and how we can expand that. So going to the next slide, part of what the goals that the board has set for me, I've reflected it in these focus areas by changing the first focus area, not just to look at additional staffing to maintain capacity, but also looking at organizational succession planning. And then at the bottom of the slide, having a new focus area, just growing the organization to expand our strategic efforts on climate change and decarbonization. And internally, we are talking about that and how we can, so we plan on bringing something to the executive committee on October 22nd and the board in November. So that's just going to be our first cut, very broad, about what the arc of changing our programs are going to be. Are there certain elements of our program portfolio that we want to de-emphasize? Are there other parts of our portfolio that we want to emphasize? And so that's, and then of course, a focus on, we think at this point, there's going to be a lot of focus on local agencies, policy development. So I look forward to comments you may have on these areas to give us more context. So in terms of next steps, today I'm requesting that you approve the 6 strategic focus areas, and the proposed budget for FY22 has already been reviewed by different committees and will come to you as the next item. And at the October 13th board meeting on the consent calendar, I hope to provide you a detailed strategic work plan, which is the document which has about 20 goals and about 70 different measures. It's about an 8 to 9 page document. And that's something that will provide visibility to anyone who's looking, wanting to see the detail of what we are working on. But it's not the most user-friendly document for a discussion with the board. But they both will be working in tandem, both meaning the strategic focus areas and the detailed strategic work plan. So my last slide goes to, which is the next one, is my recommendation to adopt the FY22 strategic focus areas as listed to the right. I'll be happy to take questions from the board.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members? So please raise your hand. I don't see any, so I will open this up for public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand or hit *9 if you're on the phone. And I don't see any hands, so I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for any final discussion, and happy to also entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt the strategic plan.
Thank you.
Tyson will second.
Great, thank you. There's a motion from Director Lahi with the second from Director Tyson. Any other discussion? If not, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Pardon the delay.
No worries.
The motion to adopt the fiscal year 22 strategic focus areas and update on fiscal year 22 strategic work plan. The vote will go to Chair Abby Koga.
Aye.
Vice Chair Campbell.
Aye.
Directors Willie,
Aye.
Armendariz,
Yes.
Fligor,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Yes.
Chua,
Aye.
Elahi,
Yes.
Martinez Beltran,
Yes.
Walia,
Aye.
Larson, and Lee.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously with Director Larson absent.
Great, thank you very much, and I look forward to our future conversations as we take a deeper dive into our strategic plan and work plan. With that, we'll go on to the next item, which was previously item 3. We're moving it to 4, and that is adoption of the fiscal year 2021-22 recommended operating budget resolutions authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to act as Chief Personnel Officer, and an updated budget and reserve policies. And we will go to Mr. Amrit Singh, our CFO and Director of Administrative Services, for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to bring you the budget for adoption that we discussed in detail at the last meeting. So, Dorothy, if you can bring up the slides, please. Okay, so we'll start with the agenda on the next slide. So obviously we went through the budget in detail at our last meeting in August 11th. So I will touch on the highlights of the recommended budget in this presentation. And you'll notice that there's just a slight update in the numbers, nothing substantial from what we presented at the August 11th meeting. And what we've done since the August 11th meeting is we've incorporated the comments, the good comments we received from the board, and updated those comments to the reserves and budget policies, and I'll go through that. I'll re-summarize how the outlook looks for our next fiscal year, and then we'll seek your approval of the 2 resolutions and the 2 policies. With that, I'll go to the next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the process we went through, and Grish also already touched on it. We started this process on June 28th at the executive committee, where we went through in detail the makeup of key components of a budget, and namely the power supply area. Then we presented the full budget to the finance committee on August 2nd, where the committee unanimously approved that we present the budget at the August 11th meeting. And at the August 11th meeting, we had a good discussion on the budget and the policies and the proposed changes we're making. And we have incorporated the comments we've received, and we will be presenting that to you today. And the next update to the budget will be at our mid-year time in March of 2022, when we will relook at the budget and ask for any adjustments at that time. With that, I'll go to the next slide. So here's how our budget is looking. As if you remember, the next calendar year, especially starting in the calendar year, is looking very favorable to us. We have much better headroom or margin, and that's primarily due to a substantial decrease in PCIA, about 47%, and a substantial and about a 10% increase in PG&E generation rates, so which basically allows us to charge higher rates, which then increases our revenues and still maintain our competitive position by providing a 1% discount to our customers. And that increase in revenues more than offsets the increases in power supply expenses. Our power supply expenses have also gone up, projecting it to be higher by about 16%. Relative to the current fiscal year, and that's mainly due to high power prices. We're in a tight supply-demand margin, and our power prices are significantly higher as a result. All that said, we're looking to add about $36.5 million to our reserves if these forecasts prevail. And I'll also touch on that our operating expenses are higher, as we covered in detail last year, and the big increases there are staffing. We're adding 6 new positions. We're increasing substantial amount of putting substantial amount of resources in our operations area, what we're calling business process optimization. We're bringing in tools and processes to better manage our power procurement portfolio and the risks associated with it. And then some of those costs are also related to cybersecurity enhancements to our infrastructure, enhancements to our cybersecurity infrastructure, and operationalizing some of our PPAs that will start coming online starting later this year. So all in all, we're looking at a good year. One thing again, with these projections, we're maintaining the 1% discount, which we can to our customers, which we can revisit once we have certainty on the actual PCIA and PG&E generation rates. So right now it's based on a forecast. The forecasts are pretty comparable to what PG&E filed in their ERA filing in June, but we won't know the final numbers until PG&E makes its update and the CPUC approves that its ERA application in December of this year. Okay, with that, we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So quick touch on why the numbers are slightly different, and it's really just a minor change. We're projecting expenses from what we presented in August 11th. The new numbers incorporate about an $84,000 increase in expenses, and that's primarily due to increases in our LNR membership areas, about $40,000 for increase in Cal CCA membership fees, and $40,000 increase for other strategic memberships that we have. And the $4,000 is the application of the 5% contingency that we apply to on all our operating expenses. So relatively, the numbers that we presented in August 11 meeting, the numbers are almost the same, with just a minor increase of $84,000 in expenses. So that's the change to the numbers. In next slide, we'll talk about how we've incorporated your feedback on budget and reserve policy. If you remember, what we asked was that we changed the budget policy to allow for increases in power supply expenses by up to 10% of the budgeted number. And that's due to the fluctuations that we experience in the power market and the fact that these expenditures are non-discretionary. And then we also asked similarly that the CEO or the organization be authorized to use reserves for up to 10% of the power supply budget to account for, again, power supply expenses variability and other non-discretionary events like revenues not materializing, or collateral or margin postings due to our energy supply contracts. What the board, the feedback that the board provided was that we limit the CEO's authority to the lesser of 10% of power supply budget, or 30 million. So we have updated both policies to reflect this change, where we are saying the CEO only has authority to the lesser of 10% of power supply budget, or $30 million. We've also clarified in the reserves policy, the reserves cannot go below the minimum operating reserve baseline level without explicit board approval. And we further clarified in the policies that for any other use of reserves, the CEO must seek board's approval. Okay, so these were the changes and the feedback that we discussed at the last board meeting that we've updated with the policies with. The next slide, please. So in summary, our next fiscal year looks very good. And again, that's because of the PCIA and favorable decrease in PCIA rate and a favorable increase in PG&E's generation rate. But again, these are uncertain. We don't know what the actual numbers are until end of the year. So we can't bank on them, but the forecast looks good. And these favorable margins basically more than offset the increase we're seeing in power supply area. We're proposing to keep our 1% customer discount rate, and we can revisit this once the PG&E and PCI rates are known. We're updating the reserves and budget policies to allow the CEO to use the reserve funds in an amount lesser of 10% of the budgeted power supply cost of 30 million, or to increase the power supply budget by 10% or 30 million, whichever is less. And if you remember our discussion, we have increased our reserve targets in lieu of renewing our line of credit. Our line of credit with our bank expires in October, and currently we have $35 million in line of credit. We don't need it, we don't use it, and it will save us $150,000. We have sufficient reserves to basically manage the operations without the line of credit, and we decided to self-fund that level of liquidity that the line of credit provided by increasing our reserve targets. So those are the highlights of what we had discussed last month and how we've incorporated the feedback. With that, I'll go to the recommendation slide. So we're asking for 2 votes today. One is to approve the 2 resolutions. The first resolution, 2021-21, adopting the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 operating budget. The other resolution is 2021-2022, creating a personnel system and authorizing CEO as a chief personnel officer. So that's 1 vote. And then we need a separate vote to approve the 2 policies, the budget policy and the financial reserve policy. Any questions? I have a lot more material in the appendix that we can go into any details that we want to go into.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Singh. Let's see, I'll take some questions, but before I do that, I just wanted to ask our general counsel, is it possible for us to just have 1 vote on the resolution 2021-21, 2021-22, and then approving the policies for the budget and financial reserves? I think we could do all that in one.
Well, that's a good question, Chair. You know, this was my recommendation to staff, by the way, so I'll take responsibility for it, was to separate the resolutions from the policies. But in fact, legally, you could consolidate all 3. So when we get to that time, we can just walk through, describe the motion as a single motion that would adopt all at one time.
Great, thank you. So I may ask you to help us by reading the actual language of the motion.
I'll be very happy to do
that time. Great, thank you. We will now go to Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair Abikuga. First of all, thank you so much for the report, and as I'm new on this, so if you could bear with me regarding some of the questions you might have covered last month. It's certainly great when you ever see that there's a surplus instead of a deficit. So from reading the report, it looked like last year there was actually a $6 million deficit, but this year the projected surplus will be about $36.5 million. Am I correct?
Correct.
Great. Now, and that you mentioned is because of the PCIA decrease rates and also the increase of the PG&E generation rates. So how does the increase in PG&E increase rates affect the revenue? If you could explain that to me a little bit, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a slide, Dorothy, in the appendix. It might be helpful to bring that up as well. So we try to maintain competitive rates relative to PG&E. So if PG&E's rates are higher, that means we can charge more and still maintain 1% discount.
Right.
So that's one reason. And the other reason is for being a CCA customers, our customers pay a PCIA charge to PG&E. So we offset that charge in our rate so that the customer, when we take all of these movements in account, customer ends up getting the 1% discount. You just passed it, Dorothy. Back, I think it's right here. So this is a chart, for example, that shows what I'm talking about. So in the current rate, for example, PG&E is about 10, 11 cents a kilowatt hour, let's say. And you can see the blue is what we can charge our customers to maintain that 1% discount to the customer.
Right.
So what happens now is that PCIA, the orange box, shrinks. The solid bar, the PG&E rate goes up. We can still maintain 1% discount, but the blue, we can increase the blue box, our rate that we charge to the customer. So that the customer is still getting a discount relative to PG&E of 1%, but we were able to bring in additional revenues because of the higher rate we can now charge the customer while still being competitive with PG&E.
Great. So if that's the case, is there any way you could figure out what the 1% discount would be as related to the actual revenue? Because it looks like the revenues total you have is about, say, 300 million. So does 1% means that it would be about 3 million less in revenues if we charge a greater discount?
I think it's around maybe $3 to $4 million, if I recall correctly.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's say if we could see that this 36 million is going to be something that would be ongoing in the future, then it's certainly possible that the future rate that SVC could charge could be not just 1%, but even 3, 4, even 5% less than PG&E because of the fact that you are generating such a positive number. Is that a correct statement?
That's a correct statement. So that's a decision, the strategic decision the board will have to make, how to use the reserves or the additional margin or contribution to reserve, whether to fund that with additional discounts to our customers, which we have done in the past, or to increase our decarbonization effort. So that's a decision for the board to make.
No, this is definitely music to my ears. Certainly the putting into reserve makes a lot of sense at this point, right? But I think in terms of future, I mean, there's certainly potential, even more savings to customers or putting into other green efforts. I think that's really smart. And the last question I have is regarding this line of credit having maintained a $35 million line of credit, the bank was charging the organization about $150K a year, even though we're not using it.
Yeah, our implied cost when we look at foregone earnings, collateralization that they hold, it comes to about $150,000.
Yeah, that's very expensive for a loan that we don't use. So thanks for putting it in so we can save that. But that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions from directors? I don't see any more hands, so I will open this up for public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak, please raise your hand or hit *9 if you're on the phone. And I don't see any, so I will close public comment, bring it back to the board for any other discussion, and happy to also entertain a motion. Let's see, I don't see any hands going up, so could I have Mr. Stepanovich, would you mind reading the motion that should be made?
Very, very happy to do that. So the motion would be to adopt resolutions number 2021 and 2021-21 and 2021-22, and also approve the updated budget and financial reserve policies as part of the same motion.
So moved.
I second.
I'm sorry, let's see, was that Director Chua that made the motion and Director Beltran? Or was it Director Flagler?
I made the motion, Director Martinez Beltran.
I'm sorry, thank you, Director Martinez Beltran. And the second was
Chua.
Director Chua. All right, sorry about that. I was looking down. Any other discussion? If not, could we get a roll call vote, please? And I want to welcome Director Larson from Sunnyvale. Thank you for joining us.
Abby Koga. I actually have 2 slides with the exact verbiage just spoken, so I can put them both up for you if you like.
If it's the same, exactly the same as this, I think we're fine with just this slide. Is that
I think with the motion that's been read into the record, I think we, again, should be good, which is we have adoption of the two resolutions and the budget and reserve policies as part of the motion.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll call the roll. Chair Abby Koga,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gibbons,
Aye.
Directors Willie,
Aye.
Armandaris,
Yes.
Fligor,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Chua,
Aye.
Elahi,
Aye.
Martinez Beltran,
Yes.
Walia,
Aye.
Larson,
Yes.
Lee.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Do any board members have announcements? I don't see any hands. And I'm going to, Mr. Balachandran, do you have anything further? No? All right. Well, with that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we will see you in October.